If one day you woke up as the last living person on Earth, what would you do? Almost everyone on the planet has been turned to dust, and now these two sisters must face off against flesh-eating zombies, insane survivors, and paranoid scientists from an underground facility, if they want to survive. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to survive the cosmic apocalypse in Night of the Comet. This girl is about to have the strangest night of her life. It's 11 days before Christmas in 1984, and the unsuspecting people of Los Angeles are in for a deadly surprise. Tonight, our planet will orbit through the tail of an ancient comet known as the Visitor, that last crossed paths with the Earth over 65 million years ago. On every corner of the globe, excited partygoers have gathered in the streets to witness this galactic spectacle. But what they don't realize is that none of them are gonna survive. While the streets of LA begin to flood with comet enthusiasts, there's at least one teenager in the city who couldn't care less. Reggie Belmont is a girl with big hair and a bigger attitude, who's more concerned with keeping her high scores on the movie theater's Tempest game than catching the cosmic show, until her boss tells her to kick everyone out so that they can close for the night. Up in the projection booth, she stops to chat with her boyfriend Larry, who's been selling bootleg copies of popular movies and pocketing the cash on the side. He has a customer coming by after the theater closes, so she agrees to help him sneak back in and spend the night there in exchange for a cut of the profits, having no idea that this is actually going to save her life. Meanwhile, Reggie's younger sister Sam gets into a big fight with their stepmother, who's using the house to host a comet party, while their father is away on a military deployment to Honduras. The argument escalates until the woman straight up decks Sam with a punch to the face, and she decides to spend the night out in the shed to get away from everyone. Outside, the adults are busy boozing it up when suddenly they witness an astonishing burst of colors, and thundering explosions light up in the sky. It's astounding, but it's also the last thing that any of them are ever going to see.
Okay, these people are treating this like it's one big party, but the hangover for this one is going to be deadly. They've all gathered outside to watch as the Earth passes through the tail of this comet for the first time in millions of years. It's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of moment that almost nobody wants to miss. But by the time they realize that they're all in danger, it's already going to be too late. First, it's important for us to understand exactly what they're all so excited to look at. A comet is basically a large ball of frozen space dust that's left over from when the solar system was first formed around 4.6 billion years ago, and orbits around the sun over a period ranging from just a few years to several 100,000 years. Some comets originate from the Kuiper Belt, a region of space that's full of icy celestial bodies just outside of the orbit of Neptune. These are called short-period comets and take less than 200 years to complete a revolution around the sun. Others come from an area called the Oort cloud on the very outer edges of our solar system. These are known as long-period comets and take much longer to complete their orbit, with the farthest reaching comets taking more than 250,000 years to go around the sun just once. That's a long time, but this comet, which only appears once every 65 million years, would easily be the farthest traveling comet that we've ever seen. Comets are pulled from the far reaches of space by the sun's gravity and travel through the solar system in an enormous oval path that intersects with the Earth's more circular orbit. The main body of a comet consists of a large ball of frozen dust that's called its nucleus, which are usually about 10 miles or so across. As a comet gets closer to the sun, the ice begins to melt, turning into a tremendous cloud of gas that can be larger than entire planets, known as its coma. This combination of dust and gas eventually forms into a long, bright tail that stretches through space along the comet's path for millions of miles. which is what's about to give our unsuspecting comet watchers here the last light show that any of them are ever going to see. Now, you probably remember being warned not to look directly into the sun during the most recent solar eclipse, and that's because the extreme brightness of the event can cause severe damage to your retinas if you try to view it with the naked eye. Instead, experts recommend that you use specialized eye protection to prevent yourself from being injured while still being able to enjoy the show, which these people might have wanted to look into. With that being said, besides potential harm to their eyes, the comet watchers here really have no reason to believe that they could be in any danger. But this kind of thing has actually happened before. You've probably heard of Halley's Comet, but did you know that its passing once caused an outbreak of apocalyptic mass hysteria? During its approach in the year 1910, newly developed technology revealed that the comet's tail was actually full of a highly toxic gas called cyanogen. Many feared that when Earth passed through its tail, the gas would flood our atmosphere and cause a catastrophe of unbelievable proportions that could kill off all life on this planet. This led to the mass buying of gas masks, anti-comet pills, and anti-comet umbrellas, which were all of questionable scientific value. In reality, the gas posed no danger for our planet at all, which should be pretty obvious considering that we're all still here. Of course, it turned out to be nothing, but a little bit of paranoia would have gone a long way for the comet watchers in our story. They're all too amazed to see the danger coming, and in the morning, Reggie and her sister are about to wake up in a post-apocalypse that's more insane than they could ever imagine.
The next morning, Reggie wakes up to find her boyfriend absolutely furious that the buyer still hasn't returned with his copy of the film. Frustrated, he says that he's going to take his motorcycle to find out what's wrong, but this is the last time that you'll ever see Larry alive. As he opens the back door, Larry is suddenly clubbed over the head by a zombified-looking man who's been lurking out in the alley. The mutant drags his lifeless body away after finishing him off, but Reggie here is too busy playing video games to notice. After a while, she decides to take a peek outside for the first time and is immediately thrown off by what she sees. To her surprise, there are no signs of anyone around besides hundreds of discarded outfits lying in strange piles of red dust, and the sky is still tinted with an ominous red haze. Confused, she figures that last night's party must have gotten a little crazier than expected, and has to circle around to the alley when she accidentally locks herself out. Worry begins to set in as she discovers Larry's keys and a blood-covered pipe wrench lying on the ground near the back door. It looks like her boyfriend never made it to his motorcycle, and when she goes to investigate, she hears strange chewing noises coming from behind a pile of trash. Suddenly, the zombified man springs out from his hiding place, holding a chunk of Larry's flesh in his hands. He growls at her to come closer, but it's pretty obvious that listening to him would be a bad idea. Instead, Reggie begins slowly backing away, warning the man that she knows how to defend herself if she has to. The zombie continues moving closer, forcing Reggie to drop him with an open hand strike to the nose, followed by a swift knee between the legs. As she runs for the motorcycle, the zombie grabs her from behind and throws her down into a pile of trash, but Reggie picks up a chunk of wood and breaks it over the side of his head, stunning him long enough for her to quickly speed away. As she's driving through the city, she begins to notice something strange. Although the electronic devices seem to be working fine, the streets are as lifeless as the surface of Mars. Not only is there no traffic or anyone out for a walk, but people's cars are still running, while sitting empty in the middle of the road, as if whoever was driving them just up and vanished without a trace. She arrives at home, but the situation isn't any better. Just like everywhere else, there's no sign of life anywhere around the house, until she suddenly runs into Sam, who's been spending the morning getting ready for cheerleading practice in her bedroom, completely unaware of how bad things really are. Reggie gets frustrated with trying to explain and eventually leads the girl outside to have a look for herself, but her sister is too horrified to face the truth, insisting that this must be some kind of sick joke. While they're desperately trying to reach anyone by phone, they hear another human voice for the first time all day. It's a DJ from one of the local radio stations, and the girls decide to head down there to check it out.
Okay, to be fair, I get why Sam here is freaking out. After all, everyone that they've ever known was just turned into space dust overnight. But if you look on the bright side, at least they've got no more work or bills to pay, and all of the technology that they need is still working fine, for now anyway. The only problem is that they're already starting off on a bad foot. They may not realize it, but going to the radio station is going to be a big mistake for several reasons. First of all, if they were actually paying attention to the broadcast, then they would have noticed that the radio station host said that it was Friday night, even though it's now actually Saturday morning. Obviously, this means that the recording is still on a loop from the night before. Odds are good that everyone at the station is dead too. And not only would going there be a waste of time, but it could also turn out to be a trap, so I'd skip it and choose to focus on more important things instead. They may think that finding other people will be a good thing, but unless it's someone that they know and trust, I'd stay away, because you never know what people's intentions are in a post-apocalyptic scenario like this one. Instead, they need to come to terms with the fact that things are never going back to normal, and focus on setting themselves up for long-term survival on their own. It's time to take a page out of the Doomsday Prepper's playbook and start focusing on their survival essentials. For their most basic needs, preppers need to follow the rule of 3, which means that you can survive for about 3 days without any water, and up to about 3 weeks without any food. Going by this logic, this would make finding a source of drinkable water the top priority. But in this particular apocalypse, that shouldn't be a problem for at least several months, since nothing was destroyed and there's hardly anyone around who'd be competing with them for resources. Instead, the more pressing problem here seems to be these flesh-eating zombies who've taken over the city's alleyways. To make matters even worse, these ghouls aren't mindless either. They use weapons and talk, indicating that they still have relatively high levels of brain function, which makes them extra dangerous. Plus, as of right now, they don't know if there are any other human survivors out there who might want to do them harm. Because of this, my highest priority would be finding some weapons to defend themselves with when push eventually comes to shove. The good news is that their dad is in the military and trained both of the girls in the art of self-defense. So if there are any weapons around the house, I'd start off with those. Otherwise, they need to get themselves to the nearest gun store and arm up. But they'll need to be careful that the other survivors didn't have the same idea and get there first, because that could quickly turn dangerous for obvious reasons. After that, it's time to get some supplies. First, I'd try to find a local sporting goods store, where they could hopefully dig up some water purification equipment, long-term camping food like MREs, survival tools like hatchets, saws, and supplies to start a fire, and possibly some more durable and less flashy clothes to help them blend in and weather the elements. Next, I'd hit a pharmacy for essential medical supplies, since they clearly won't be making any visits to the doctor's office anytime soon. After that, it's time for a trip to the grocery store for drinking water and food. I'd recommend focusing on non-perishable items, since they're the easiest to store long-term. But some raw meat could definitely come in handy as a distraction if they run into any more of those flesh-hungry creeps in their travels. Once their basic needs for water, food, and self-defense are met, they'll need to find a place to bunker down that's easily defensible, but also unlikely to draw any unwanted attention from unsavory individuals. Their house works fine to keep them warm and dry, but it's also the kind of place where other survivors who might have had bad intentions would expect to find you hiding out. Instead, I'd try the local school. Not only should it have plenty of supplies, but be easy to defend, and also give you multiple routes to escape from if things go horribly wrong. With water, food, and shelter, they'll have everything that they need to survive, at least for a little while. But eventually, they're going to have to make scavenging runs into the city to get more supplies. The motorcycle is great for getting around, but it's also loud and draws a lot of attention. For shorter trips, they should consider going on foot, or taking a traditional bicycle to keep a lower profile instead. If possible, getting out of the city altogether could be much safer in the long run, but they'll need to be extremely well supplied to make going fully off the grid feasible. Things are looking pretty scary right now, but if they make the right moves early on, then they could set themselves up to live like kings of the wasteland. Unfortunately, these girls still don't have their heads in the game, and it won't be long before they end up paying the price.
The radio station looks empty just like everywhere else, but this time the girls aren't alone. When they find the DJ booth, they quickly realize that the voice that they heard was just a recording playing on a loop from the night before, and that's when things get dangerous. Just then, a man steps out of the shadows holding a gun and orders the girls not to move. Reggie instinctively assumes the worst, but once the man's sure that they aren't zombies, he lowers his gun and apologizes, promising that he doesn't mean them any harm. He introduces himself as Hector, a truck driver from out of town. Earlier that day, he and another woman were ambushed by a group of the freaks, and although he managed to escape, his friend wasn't so lucky, being chased down and eaten alive right in front of him. After hearing this, Reggie realizes that the same thing must have happened to her boyfriend and runs off into another room. When he finds out that Sam and Reggie is newly single, Hector here immediately decides that this would be a great time to shoot his shot. But Reggie's more interested in figuring out what's going on and asks Hector where he was when the comet passed. He says that he was sleeping in the back of his truck, causing her to realize that the three of them each spent the night in a room that was lined with steel, which must explain how they're all still alive. Back in the studio, Sam here starts messing around with the DJ booth and manages to put herself live on the air, but that was her biggest mistake. You see, as a joke, she reads off the station's phone number when suddenly someone calls. After speaking to them for a bit, Sam runs to get the others, but by the time that they get back, the person has already hung up. She's too shocked to remember much about the conversation, but says that the person was from a think tank that's somewhere far out in the desert. They explained that anyone who was fully exposed to the comet immediately disintegrated into dust, while people with only minimal exposure turned into those flesh-hungry zombies who are roaming the streets, although they'll turn to dust too eventually. Until they reach the people on the phone again, the three of them decide that, in the morning, they'll go get some weapons from the nearby army base and settle in on the couch for the night.
Okay, call me paranoid, but I can already tell that this isn't going to end well for the girls. Sam here just gave away their location to anyone who happened to be listening in on the radio, and that's virtually guaranteed to attract all kinds of unwanted attention. That alone would be bad enough, but what's even worse is that she made direct contact with a group of survivors from an underground bunker, and now they know exactly where to find her and her sister. At first, it might seem like talking to them is no big deal, or that it could even turn out to be a good thing, but anyone who knows anything about surviving in an apocalypse knows that scientists from an underground facility are the absolute last people who you should trust. I'd rather take my chances with the flesh-eating zombies myself, because at least there's no confusion about what their intentions are. But people in lab coats are capable of anything, especially when there's no more society left to keep them in check. They'll be better prepared, better armed, and now they know where the girls are hiding out, and that's a recipe for disaster. The truth is that getting involved with other survivors at all is a terrible idea, and that's including Hector here. To be fair, I get the urge to make contact with someone as a way to start feeling some sense of normalcy again, but if they're gonna survive, then they need to assume that everyone in the world is out to get them, until proven otherwise, and only make contact with other people after they're absolutely sure that it's safe enough for them to do so. Speaking of stranger danger, I don't trust Hector here as far as I could throw him. He may seem innocent enough right now, but there's just no way to know what his real intentions are. And it's hard for me to trust him after he decided to put the moves on Reggie here no less than 10 seconds after finding out that her boyfriend was eaten alive by a comet zombie. He might just turn out to be a hopeless romantic who's looking for love in all the wrong places, but come on, man. At least have the courtesy to wait until the poor guy's body is cold before you start trying to hook up with his girlfriend. And right in front of her younger sister, too. That takes some nerve, even in the apocalypse. Sorry, Hector, but if it were me, I'm voting you off the island. Instead of trusting him, I'd say that the girls need to wait until he falls asleep, take his gun, and then ditch him. That way, they'll be armed and dangerous. And plus, now that the whole world knows exactly where they're hiding out, they should be getting as far away from there as possible anyway. They need to go back to focusing on survival and stay completely off the grid until they're 100% sure that it's safe for them to come out of hiding, which could be for quite a while, if ever at all. So it's best to get used to the isolation now and buckle down for the long haul. Someone like Reggie especially, who's been keeping an eye out for danger this whole time, should know when to play it safe, and they're about to find out why telling the scientists where to find them was such a big mistake.
It turns out that Sam here has just made contact with a group of scientists who'd taken shelter in an underground facility before the comet arrived. They're looking for any survivors that they can find, with plans to bring them back to their bunker. And although this researcher Audrey here says that she's against the idea, they decide that they're going to get the girls the next day. In the morning, the girls get their hands on a couple of submachine guns and start getting in some target practice on the nearby cars. Meanwhile, Hector says that he needs to go to San Diego to check on his family, promising that he'll come back as soon as he can. When he arrives at his mother's house, he's surprised to hear signs of life coming from inside. But he quickly finds out that it's just her record player and his family are already gone. While he's grabbing some sentimental pictures, he realizes that he has an unexpected guest. There's a zombie at the front door, and after giving them several warnings to get out of there, Hector pulls it open, ready to start blasting, but there's a problem. This zombie is a little kid. Hector turns around and slams the door in the zombie kid's face, but it quickly breaks its way in and starts chasing him through every room in the house. With nowhere left to go, he manages to escape through the bathroom window just as the kid punches straight through the door and takes off running down the street, lucky to have left the place without getting killed.
Okay, that was a close call. They might still be alive, but the truth is that all three of these idiots are going about things in the worst way possible. And it's really a miracle that they've managed to survive for this long. Starting with the girls, it seems like they've learned absolutely nothing, even after their run-ins with Comet zombies, almost getting capped by Hector, and giving away their exact coordinates to the underground think tank. Sure, they've got their hands on some excellent weapons, and target practice looks like a lot of fun, but that's until you remember just how much noise it is that they're making. This could easily attract unwanted attention, not just from zombies, but even worse, from people who might want those guns for themselves, and will most likely either kill the girls or take them prisoner when they find them. They need to stop everything that they're doing, keep as low of a profile as possible, and focus on finding supplies for long-term survival since time is already running out. Come to think of it, it's already been over 24 hours since this apocalypse started, and I don't think I've seen them eat or drink anything besides a couple of diet sodas and some Twizzlers. Submachine guns are great and all, but they're going to be useless if the girls die of dehydration. So it's time to focus on the more important things and stop goofing around before it's too late. As for Hector, I understand wanting to check on your family, but 1, they're definitely dead, and 2, driving a whole-ass semi-truck around in broad daylight is just asking for trouble. I mean, it's Apocalypse Survival 101 not to park your big-ass truck directly in front of a building that you're about to scavenge from. Use your head, man! That 25,000-pound hunk of steel that you're driving around is about as loud and as easy to see as it gets, and could easily attract the attention of zombies or raiders, which is exactly what ended up happening. Who would have guessed? My advice? Trade that thing in for a Prius that's lower profile and easier on gas. At the very least, he should travel by night and park a safe distance away from wherever he wants to go. He needs to hide the truck as best as he can, and then go in on foot. That way, at least he won't be announcing to the entire neighborhood that he's in the area. Now, once the zombies showed up at the front door, why waste time going over there and telling them to get away? Common sense should tell you that anyone who's confident enough to just stroll right up to you under these circumstances, zombified or otherwise, is definitely not someone who's going to listen to your warnings. Instead, it would have been much safer to try sneaking out another way without starting a fight. If there's one thing that you absolutely do not want to do here, it's open the door for them to come right on in. That's a good way to get your ankles chewed off by a zombified middle schooler, but not exactly the smartest approach if you want to survive. Besides these few hiccups that nearly cost him his life, it looks like Hector here managed to do alright, but they've had a few too many close calls for only being one day into this apocalypse. They all need to be much more careful, which is something that the girls are about to find out the hard way.
Back in the city, Sam starts getting homesick while thinking about all of the friends that she'll never see again. So Reggie decides that they should find some new clothes at the mall to help cheer her up. For a minute, they're actually having a good time, making the best of the whole situation, but it isn't long before they run into trouble. A group of creepy former stock boys who've taken over the store have been watching them through the security cameras. Suddenly, one of them turns off the lights and starts taunting the girls over the intercom while his friends move into position. But Reggie makes it to her weapon first and quickly fires into one of the cameras, knocking out the whole system. It's too late to escape though, because two of the creeps have already made their way down to the perfume counter, and they open fire on Reggie with their weapons, forcing her to take cover around the corner. Seeing that her sister is in danger, Sam jumps up and distracts them by pelting the attackers with some shoes, allowing Reggie to quickly hide out among the mannequins. It's a good trick, but she ends up missing every shot, and the creeps pin her down again while she has to reload. The girls are holding their own so far, but they are outnumbered, outgunned, and quickly running out of ammo. So Reggie here decides that it's time to switch tactics. Hoping to trick them, she warns the attackers that they're expecting more of her friends to come soon, but they call her bluff and the girls have nowhere left to run. What none of them realize is that the team of scientists is actually about to show up, but whether they're friends of the girls or not remains to be seen. In the chaos, Sam here manages to sneak upstairs and drops a TV onto the two minions, distracting them long enough for Reggie to slip away. It looks like they might get out of this after all, but when she turns around, Sam bumps right into the guy who looks like a combination of Slim Shady and Bobby from a Goofy movie. She drops him with a quick knee to the face, but as she tries to run away, she's captured by the Stock Boys' creepy leader, Willie, and one of his lackeys. While they're holding Sam at the top of the stairs, he orders Reggie to give herself up, and she emerges from the elevator using one of Willie's people as a meat shield. He admires her cutthroat approach, but unfortunately, it's not going to be enough, and Willie quickly turns his weapon on his own man, dropping him without a second thought. Without a bargaining chip, Reggie and Sam are both taken hostage by the rest of the group and chained up in the back of the stockroom. Willie here explains that he used to be a lowly stock boy, but now, thanks to the COMET, he's the owner of the store, and he's gonna make the girls pay for the things that they stole, taking off his glasses to reveal that he's slowly transforming into one of the zombie men himself. Taunting them, he decides that he wants to play a game and starts threatening Sam with a revolver that only has one round in the cylinder, squeezing the trigger and letting it click until her number finally comes up. The girls are terrified, but just when he gets to the last pull of the trigger, the team of scientists show up and start smoking them with their automatic weapons, saving the girls at the last moment. Relieved, they think that they've just been rescued, but the truth is that these scientists are really just as dangerous. As the scientists take them out to their helicopter, they quickly realize that Sam here isn't a good candidate for whatever it is that they have planned. Audrey and another egghead decide that they're going to stay there and take care of her instead, while they wait for a bit to see if Hector shows up. Thinking that they'll eventually bring her too, Sam waves goodbye to her sister from the ground as they take Reggie back to their bunker in the helicopter, having no idea that they're never going to see each other again.
Okay, for now, the girls have managed to escape with their lives, or at least that's what they think. But the truth is that it never even would have gotten to this point in the first place if they'd just been a bit more careful. Somehow, things are about to get even worse than being held hostage by a group of heavily armed COMET zombies. And I hate to say it, but Reggie and Sam, it looks like you f***ed up. I'll forgive you for getting caught by surprise the first time at the radio station, but after finding Hector alive, as well as the scientists on the phone, and not to mention the zombies roaming the streets, you've gotta assume that other people are still around who could be dangerous, so don't just go recklessly party it up at the mall. I get that girls just wanna have fun, but prioritizing fresh clothes over much more important supplies like food and water is a good way to end up dead. As if that alone wasn't bad enough, you gave away your position by blasting loud music, let your guard down before you were sure that the place was safe, and worst of all, let the COMET creeps catch you unarmed. Here I was, thinking that the whole point of having guns in the first place was to use them if you needed to. But you went ahead and left them in another room as soon as you walked in the door. And how did that work out for you, huh? Then, once the fighting started, you made a huge mistake by immediately splitting up, when what you should have done was stick together and quickly move for the nearest exit so that you could get away clean without ending up in a shootout. In the end, you managed to hold your own for the most part, at least, and that was a great use of the meat shield strategy, even if it didn't work out. But what you don't realize yet is that you've just been captured by someone even worse. Reggie, why would you ever agree to go with them while your sister had to stay behind? You've been nothing but cautious of everyone so far, but decided to trust these guys because they were wearing lab coats? Big mistake. When they say that they're going to take care of Sam, they don't mean like how a doctor takes care of their patient. They mean like how Tony Soprano takes care of a guy who owes him money. The truth is that underground eggheads are the last people that you should trust in a situation like this. And you're about to find out what they have planned is so much worse than anything you could possibly imagine. Good luck, Reggie and Sam, because you f***ed up.
Back inside the mall, the woman scientist begins preparing an injection for Sam, saying that it would treat her symptoms from exposure to the comet. Concerned, Sam insists that the itchy rash on her shoulder is just a reaction from her nerves getting up. But the woman promises that the shot that she's about to give her will get rid of it. After convincing her to cooperate, the woman injects Sam with the solution, and in a matter of seconds, she suddenly drops dead, never having suspected the horrifying truth. With Sam out of the picture, the other scientists chime in that he wants to go to the radio station and wait for Hector to show up so that they can take him too. But Audrey here says that she isn't going to be part of taking anyone else back, before turning around and abruptly shooting her partner dead. Later that day, Hector comes back to the city having found himself a fancy new car and a Santa costume to get in the Christmas spirit. He arrives at the radio station and goes inside, but the only person there is the scientist, and she's holding him at gunpoint. Confused, Hector calmly asks her if she's seen either one of the girls, but the woman confesses that her mental condition has deteriorated to the point where she really has no idea what's going on at all anymore. Before she completely lost it, she wrote down everything that Hector here needs to know in a notebook that she left on the desk. It turns out that despite all of their preparations, the other scientists left the vents open and the fans on in their underground facility, which caused them to accidentally be exposed to the comet's radiation. Hopeful that they can save themselves by creating a serum, they've been capturing any survivors that they can find and harvesting their blood as a way to buy themselves more time. But she's finally had enough of their twisted scheme. After confessing the truth about their intentions, she injects herself with the lethal solution and quietly dies there on the couch. But Hector here won't be going down without a fight. Down in the underground lab, one of the researchers takes Reggie to an ominous-looking conference room and starts grilling her about her past medical history, specifically asking about any blood-related illnesses that she might have. Growing concerned, Reggie starts to ask some questions of her own about what exactly their plans are, frustrating to the man to the point where he's ready to get up and walk away. That's when Reggie starts to catch on that something is wrong and demands to know why the others haven't showed up with her sister just yet. All of the sudden, another scientist comes and tells the interviewer that they need to talk out in the hall. On the way out, he coldly tells the girl that her sister is dead, explaining that they killed her because of her exposure to the comet, leaving Reggie completely shocked and terrified. A few moments later, another researcher comes in to check on her and notices that she's knocked over one of their computers. Annoyed, he bends down to pick it up, but the moment that he's vulnerable to attack, Reggie clubs him over the back of the head, knocking him unconscious and buying herself a chance to escape.
Okay, this is probably going to be Reggie's one and only shot to get out of there, so she needs to do it right. She's trapped in an underground bunker with what looks like only one way out, so if the place goes into lockdown, then she's totally screwed. The only good news here is that, based on the fact that they've kept her alive for this long, it's probably safe to guess that they won't use lethal force to stop her, at least at first. Stealth is going to be her best friend here, so if it were me, I'd try taking that scientist's clothes to help myself blend in. The hallways have long sight lines, so she'll have to play it cool and act like a scientist for as long as she can. and only start running if she absolutely needs to. Her best bet is to make her way to the elevator while looking for any signs of an alternate emergency exit, and get her hands on one of the security guard's weapons if she can. The hardest part is going to be making it to the surface without getting noticed, but once she's there, she should be able to steal one of their vehicles and make a break for it. It's not gonna be easy, but if she plays her cards just right, Reggie might make it out of this alive.
Out on the surface, Hector pulls up on one of the guards patrolling the perimeter fence and convinces him to come have a look inside of the back of his car, opening it to reveal Sam's body hidden inside. Confused, the guard leans in for a closer look, and that's when Sam jumps up, pulling him in closer, while Hector knocks him out with the hatch of the trunk. It turns out that Audrey had only given Sam a dose of sedatives to trick the others into thinking that she was dead so that they would leave her alone. Now, she and Hector have come to rescue her sister and take their revenge. After checking for any more guards, Hector sneaks into the compound and starts booby-trapping their vehicles with explosives. Meanwhile, Reggie takes cover in another room as the scientist regains consciousness and puts the entire facility on high alert. She quickly ducks behind some machinery just as two guards enter the room to search for her, but one of them immediately turns around and walks out, closing the door behind him. Thinking that the coast is clear, Reggie here grabs a flashlight and starts having a look around, only to discover that she's been hiding inside one of the labs where they're harvesting blood from some of the previous unsuspecting victims. Suddenly, the first guard sneaks up and grabs Reggie from behind, and they drag her back out into the hallway. The researchers think that they've got her for good this time, but that's when Sam sneaks into their generator room and shuts down the power to the entire station, including the life support systems for their human blood bank. Suddenly, everyone starts to panic as they race to get things under control. In the confusion, they unwisely decide to leave Reggie with just one armed guard, but she quickly knocks them out and takes his weapon for herself. Making her way through the facility, she comes to a room where these two female scientists are preparing two innocent children as their next victims. Just then, someone else comes storming into the room and Reggie spins around, nearly blowing them away with a revolver shot. The shot goes wide, but fortunately, it's actually just her younger sister, and they're absolutely relieved to see each other. After a quick reunion, they restrain the two scientists by putting them to sleep with some of their laughing gas, and sneak away with the two kids following close behind. They make it to the elevator just as the rest of the researchers realize what's going on, but it's already too late, and they're able to escape back up to the surface without any more trouble. Furious, the researchers jump into their trucks, but when they turn the keys in the ignition, the car goes up in a huge explosion, killing them all in a massive fireball. Now they're finally safe and can return to the city to live their lives in peace. That night, a rainstorm rolls in, washing away the dust that was all that remained of the world that they used to know. Sometime later, Reggie and Hector have adopted the kids as their own and are getting back to their lives as normally as they can in this human-free post-apocalypse. The four of them seem to be doing great, but Sam, on the other hand, is feeling a bit left out, having never found a boyfriend of her own. As Reggie and her new family are waiting for the light to change before they cross the street, Sam here points out how ridiculous they're being, considering that there's never going to be traffic again. But her older sister argues that the burden of rebuilding society is up to them now. Frustrated, Sam storms across the street to show them how dumb that is, when suddenly she's nearly run over by a speeding car. It turns out that there is one person left on Earth after all, a teenage boy who introduces himself as Danny. Thrilled to see someone that she can get along with, Sam immediately jumps into Danny's car, and the two of them speed off down the road, promising Reggie and Hector that they'll be back by midnight. Everyone that they've ever known may have been reduced to comet dust, but with no work to show up to or bills to pay ever again, the future isn't looking half bad for our family of survivors, at least until one of them needs to see a doctor. But hey, you win some, you lose some, right?
But what would you do? If you and your friends and family got outside and decided to watch the comet go by and then all of a sudden the world ended, would you be going to the mall to shop for clothes and leaving your weapons in the other room? I don't think so. Let us know what you would do in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this. We'll see you on the next one, and have a damn good day.